Not every road is built to connect. Some are the result of extreme perseverance, defying all the ordinary laws of nature. They are places where strips of asphalt are swallowed by the ocean, appearing only when the tide recedes. Tunnels carved deep into the heart of cliffs, leading into cramped and dark spaces. Or rails clinging to the side of deadly cliffs, where every inch of iron was traded for human lives. These structures are both engineering marvels and the result of sheer recklessness, breaking all conventional logic. So why do humans persist in creating these roads that should not exist? The Passage du Gois doesn't just run across the sea. Twice a day, it completely disappears beneath the waters of the Atlantic. The road is about 2.6 miles long, connecting mainland France to the island of Noirmoutier, but it only becomes visible when the tide goes out. During that brief window, cars line up to cross the wet surface, with the ocean stretching wide on both sides. The danger begins when the water returns faster than expected. If a driver miscalculates the timing, the sea will flood in from both sides and cut off the escape route. Rescue towers are erected along the route, allowing stranded people to climb up, but the vehicles below can still be submerged by the water. The Passage du Gois exists right on the fragile boundary between a road and the ocean floor. The Guoliang Tunnel Road looks like a tunnel that was never meant to be finished. The road is about 0.75 miles long, clinging precariously at an altitude of 16 feet in the Tai Hang Mountains. The tunnel is narrow, dark, and barely wide enough for vehicles to pass each other in certain spots. Along the rock wall are irregular windows, opening directly into the abyss, letting light filter in like jagged cuts. What's even more unbelievable lies in its history. In 1972, the villagers of Guoliang began using hammers, chisels, and explosives to carve their own way out. Every chisel mark shows how humans clung to the cliff just to survive. It's not exactly a road. Guoliang is more like an escape hatch carved into the side of a sheer cliff. Los Caracoles is one of the most treacherous mountain passes in South America, connecting the borders of Chile and Argentina. The road features 29 sharp hairpin turns, stacked tightly on top of each other like a giant spring, dangling on the mountainside. The steep incline and continuous changes in direction force long trucks to take up almost the entire curve. The high altitude causes the weather to change very rapidly. In winter, ice, snow, strong winds, and the risk of rockfalls can force the route to close. Despite the danger, this road remains a vital trade artery, constantly bustling with all types of trucks. Viewed from above, Los Caracoles doesn't look like a transportation structure. It looks like a folded string of road squeezed into a place where the Andes left almost no room. The Kuranda Scenic Railway has to hug a narrow rock ledge where the rainforest, waterfalls, and mountain chasms press tightly against the tracks. Built in the late 19th century, the Kuranda Scenic is a historic heritage railway connecting Cairns with the village of Kuranda. The route passes through 15 tunnels, crosses dozens of bridges, and continuously winds around cliffs covered in green foliage. In many sections, passengers can see waterfalls plunging right outside the window, while a deep valley opens up below the train cars. That beauty conceals a harsh engineering puzzle, keeping a train weighing hundreds of tons stable on a steep mountainside amidst tropical rain. Kuranda is soothingly beautiful, but its very location makes this railway look like it shouldn't be there. Skipper's Canyon Road clings to the cliff face, while the other edge drops straight into the gorge with almost no protective barriers. The route was roughly carved by hand by gold miners in the 19th century, hanging precariously above the terrifying Shot-Over Canyon. The road is narrow, full of blind corners, and lacks enough space for two vehicles to pass each other on most of the route. When facing oncoming traffic, a driver might have to reverse on the gravel surface to the nearest passing point. Below the road is the Shotover River, one of the fastest flowing rivers in New Zealand. The river adds immense pressure to the drivers above. Due to the high risk, rental car companies usually do not allow their vehicles to enter here. Skipper's Canyon doesn't feel like driving through the mountains. It feels like balancing on the edge of them. Zoji appears as a tiny strip of dirt, wedged between snow-capped mountains and the deep chasms of the Himalayas. The road lies on the route connecting Kashmir with Ladakh at an altitude of about 11,500 feet, surpassing even the peak of Fansipan. The road surface is cramped, constantly bending with hairpin turns, and is almost entirely devoid of guardrails. Above are rocky slopes where landslides can occur. Below is a steep drop that makes passing a convoy of trucks a nerve-wracking experience. The harsh winter isolates the pass completely for about 6 months every year. Avalanche protection structures and new tunnels show just how dangerous nature is here. Zoji exists, but every cold season seems to want to erase the road from the mountainside. Climbing nearly 3,000 feet in just about 20 miles, the White Pass and Yukon Route clings to cliffs once considered impassable. The railway was built during the Klondike Gold Rush, connecting Skagway in Alaska to the Canadian interior. In some sections, the gradient reaches nearly 3.9%, twice the safe limit of standard railways, leaving the steel wheels constantly on the verge of slipping backward. This forces the train to gain altitude very quickly amidst granite terrain and cold snow. Over 450 tons of explosives were used to blast the route, and at least 35 workers lost their lives during the construction of this line. Today, the train glides through majestic forests and mountains, but beneath the peaceful facade remains a railway pushed to the very limits of engineering. The Karakoram Highway climbs into the high mountains at nearly 15,400 feet, where entire mountainsides can still shift. That road connects Pakistan with China, passing through some of the harshest terrain in the world. The road threads between young cliffs, glaciers, and raging rivers at the bottom of the valley. Earthquakes, falling rocks, flash floods, and landslides can destroy the road surface or isolate the entire region. In 2010, a massive landslide blocked the Hunza River, creating Atabad Lake and submerging a portion of the old route. New tunnels had to be built to restore the connection. The Karakoram Highway doesn't just cross mountains. It continuously battles a mountain range that hasn't stopped changing. The Death Railway clings precariously to the cliffs, hiding a brutal history that claimed tens of thousands of lives. The Death Railway was built by the Japanese military during World War II to connect Thailand with Myanmar. Allied prisoners of war and Asian civilian laborers were forced to carve a path through jungles, rocky mountains, and disease in horrific conditions. At the Wangpo Viaduct, the train still crawls on a framework hugging the cliff face, just a narrow gap away from the Kwai Noi River. The train glides through the tranquility, but every curve brings back memories of those who could not return. This is a railway that should not exist in the way it was created. The Tianmen Mountain Road doesn't climb the mountain in a straight line. It folds 99 times over a distance of about 6.7 miles, taking vehicles from nearly 656 feet up to about 4,265 feet. That's 99 tests, where each time the driver must point the car's nose toward the abyss and then jerk it back. The 180-degree turns sit so close together that from above, the road surface looks like a coiled rope thrown onto the cliff. A car barely escapes one turn before having to angle for the next, with almost no time to relax the steering wheel. After leaving the curves behind, 999 steps open up before your eyes, leading straight to Tianmen Cave, a natural rock arch piercing through the mountain body. This isn't just a road up a mountain. It's a staircase for cars, built right on thin air. Without needing a cog railway, the Bernina Express still spectacularly climbs straight up to an altitude of 7,400 feet amidst the Alps. What's even more astonishing is that the train conquers mountain slopes as steep as 7%, where steel wheels must grip directly onto smooth rails. The route threads through deep gorges, glaciers, mountain lakes, and viaducts sitting right on the edge of the abyss. At Brusillo, the tracks even coil into a spiral, so the train can lower its altitude in an extremely tight space. Heavy snow, ice, and the threat of falling rocks force the protection systems to operate amidst the unforgiving terrain. The scenery outside is peacefully beautiful. But beneath the train cars is a railway placed where the incline, altitude, and alpine winter constantly test the limits of engineering. Clinging tightly to the sea cliffs of Maui, the Kahekili Highway is so narrow that it barely has room for one lane of traffic. That road runs along the island's northwest coast, with many sections only wide enough for a single vehicle. Blind corners appear continuously between the inner cliff face and the steep slope plunging into the ocean on the outside. Guardrails aren't present everywhere, while falling rocks and an uneven road surface force the wheels to hug the mountain's edge. To yield, drivers sometimes have to reverse to the nearest clearing without knowing how far back it is. Kahekili isn't terrifying because of speed. It's terrifying because the road forces drivers to share a strip of asphalt so small on a sea cliff that leaves almost no room for error. The Nariz del Diablo once forced trains to change direction right on a nearly vertical cliff face. Known as the Devil's Nose, the terrain here is steep, challenging all the bending limits of standard railways. Engineers had to create a zigzag system, allowing the train to advance on one branch, stop, and then reverse onto another branch to conquer every bit of elevation. Right outside the window is a rocky slope fracturing deep into the Shanshan Valley. Heavy rain, landslides, and an unstable mountain foundation once made both the construction and maintenance of the route incredibly dangerous. Thousands of laborers worked in harsh conditions to carve a path through here. The Nariz del Diablo doesn't simply cross a mountain. It forces the entire train to move forward and backward on the cliff face to escape a terrain that almost refuses to let a railway exist. The train to the clouds reaches up over 13,800 feet, where clouds drift past the windows and the air becomes noticeably thin. The train crosses the arid Andes region of Argentina before approaching the La Polvoria Viaduct. The steel bridge, over 700 feet long, sits nearly 200 feet above the ground, in the middle of a plateau almost completely devoid of trees. To bring the train up to that altitude, the tracks must use loops, zigzag sections, and spirals instead of climbing straight up. Strong winds, fluctuating temperatures, and remote terrain make any incident much harder to handle. From a distance, the train looks like it's running on a thread suspended in the sky. It's a moment when the railway is no longer on the ground, but seems suspended between the clouds and the mountain gorge. A single wheel drifting off the dirt track can pull the entire jeep down the empty mountainside. Fairy Meadows Road is an unpaved route leading toward the grasslands at the foot of Nanga Parbat. Many sections are narrow, rugged, and carved directly into the rocky slope, with almost no protective guardrails. Jeeps must crawl around blind corners, while loose rocks constantly slide under the tires and the cliff wall rises right next to them. The final leg of the journey cannot be completed by vehicle, forcing travelers to walk to reach Fairy Meadows. The deeper you go, the more the traces of the modern world disappear. This road doesn't take people to a crowded place. It pushes them into an isolated mountain region, where every jolt reminds you that just beyond the wheels lies nothing but a deep abyss. thin ledge of dirt is carved across the cliff face, with hanging rocks above and a nearly vertical drop below. The Kishtwar Cliff Road is part of the treacherous corridor connecting the Kishtwar region to the Pangi Valley in the Himalayas. The road is narrow, with many unpaved sections and almost no guardrails on the outside. Vehicles must press tightly against the mountain wall when passing through sections barely wide enough for a single lane of traffic. Rain can turn the road surface to mud, while falling rocks and landslides can block the path without warning. At blind corners, it's hard for drivers to know if another vehicle is approaching from the opposite direction. Kishtwar doesn't feel like a road built on a mountain. It looks like a cut too thin, where humans desperately try to keep traffic alive between the rock and the void. Hairpin turns stacked on top of a barren mountainside make the road look like it's falling into the abyss. The D915 connects the Bayburt region to Ov through the steep terrain of northeastern Turkey. The most famous section near Derebashi consists of many narrow, sharp, and continuously changing curves on a gravel surface. The cliff presses close on one side, while the outside has almost no guardrails to stop vehicles from sliding down the steep slope. Fog can completely obscure the next curve. Rain, snow, and loose rocks further reduce traction in a place where turning around is already incredibly difficult. Viewed from above, the D915 looks like a broken ladder placed against the mountain. But for the person behind the wheel, every rung of that ladder is another time they must maneuver their car right on the edge of the precipice. The Pamban railway bridge once stood bare in the middle of the sea, where waves and gale-force winds could strike directly at the trains. The historic railway bridge, about 1.4 miles long, has connected mainland India to Ramswaram Island since 1914. Hundreds of slender piers elevate the tracks just barely above the water's surface. In the middle of the bridge, a span can open to let ships pass, turning the structure into a steel machine operating amidst corrosive salt spray. In 1964, a supercyclone devastated the region and severely damaged the bridge. The old line ceased operations after the lifting mechanism developed issues, before a new railway bridge was built alongside it. Pamban shows what happens when humans place a railway in a spot the ocean is always trying to reclaim. The North Yungas Road, barely wider than a truck, clings to the mountainside, with a deep abyss hidden by clouds on the outside. That road descends from the high Andes down to the cloud forest near Caracoles via narrow curves with almost no guardrails. Waterfalls spill directly onto the road surface, making the rocks and mud incredibly slippery. Rain, fog, and dense vegetation can easily hide vehicles approaching from the opposite direction. Before the new route was opened, buses and trucks had to share this dangerous path as a main traffic corridor. The crosses along the road serve as a reminder of the price of a single misjudgment. The North Yungas doesn't need speed to become a hazard. If just one wheel slips off the dirt edge, the road instantly ends in mid-air. The iron ore train stretches almost out of sight on the horizon, hauling hundreds of ore cars across the Sahara Desert. The train transports ore from the Zuira mining region to the port of Nouadhibou on a railway line over 430 miles long. As the train rolls, iron dust coats the freight cars red and billows into a long cloud trailing behind. Many locals still sit directly on the piles of ore to travel across the desert. No roof, no seats, only the scorching daytime wind, the freezing night, and metallic dust covering their bodies throughout the hours-long journey. In a land with almost no way out, getting off the train could also leave a person stranded. This is not just a freight line. It is a place where people turn a massive industrial train into a ride for survival across the Sahara. Coming to the Atlantic Ocean Road, 8 bridges rise from the sea, making cars sometimes feel like they are driving straight into the Atlantic. Stretching about 5 miles, the Atlantic Ocean Road connects small islands off the west coast of Norway with continuously winding stretches of road. The most prominent is the Storsisundet Bridge, where the deck is so curved and steep that the other end seems to vanish when viewed from certain angles. In calm weather, the route is as beautiful as a ribbon of silk floating on the water. When a storm rolls in, gale force winds and ocean waves can crash white foam over the bridge barriers, obscuring the road ahead. There are no high mountains or deep chasms. But the Atlantic Ocean Road still shouldn't exist because it is placed exactly where the land ends and the ocean begins. The Combe-Laval Road is carved into the middle of a limestone cliff, with one half inside the mountain and the other half opening straight out to the abyss. The road was built in the late 19th century in the Vercors Massif of France. The route runs through rock alcoves, short tunnels, and stone balconies suspended high above the valley. Many sections are so narrow that the cliff face almost touches one side of the car, while the other side is separated from the void by only a low parapet. Blind corners make it difficult for drivers to see vehicles approaching from the opposite direction. Falling rocks and a damp road surface continue to make the journey even more precarious. Combe-Laval looks more like an unfinished walkway on a cliff face than a road meant for vehicles. Moki Dugway opens with a series of gravel hairpin turns, pulling vehicles up over 1,000 feet in just a few miles on the face of Cedar Mesa. Moki Dugway was once built for trucks transporting ore from uranium mining areas in Utah. The narrow road continuously changes direction as it clings to the nearly vertical rock slope. The loose surface makes it easy for wheels to lose traction, especially when it rains or when vehicles descend too quickly. Guardrails are absent on most of the route, and the outer edge drops straight down to the vast desert below. Long vehicles and vehicles towing trailers can face difficulties at these sharp curves. Viewed from the valley floor, Moki Dugway looks like a zigzag scratch on the cliff face, too thin to be a traffic road. with 11 hairpin turns stacked on top of each other around a waterfall. Trollstigen takes cars, climbing nearly 2,800 feet amidst the Rocky Mountains of Norway. Trollstigen winds up the steep mountainside before reaching the Stigrøra Plateau. Each curve is narrow and changes direction almost completely, forcing large vehicles to use almost the entire width of the road. A stone bridge crosses the Stigfosen waterfall, where water plunges down right next to the stream of vehicles climbing the mountain. The higher you go, the deeper the valley opens up below, and clouds can obscure the sections of road ahead. The route closes in the winter and can be affected by heavy rain or rockfalls. Trollstigen is unbelievably beautiful, but that beauty is forged from a road in a constant tug-of-war with the cliff face. The Tizi in Test Pass reaches an altitude of nearly 6,900 feet on the route connecting the Marrakesh region with the Sousse Plain. That narrow strip of asphalt crawls over the high Atlas Mountains, where just outside the curve is a mountainside plunging into the valley. The pass continuously changes direction through arid cliffs and steep sections with limited visibility. In many places, the road surface is just wide enough for two vehicles to pass each other, while guardrails are sparse or non-existent. Fog, heavy rain, and falling rocks can turn this mountain road into a corridor with almost no way out. Just one large vehicle appearing around a bend is enough to force oncoming traffic to press tightly against the edge of the road. Tizi Test exists in the Atlas as if the Rocky Mountain had been slashed open to reluctantly let traffic pass through. Sani Pass climbs the slope with curves so sharp that vehicles often must use four-wheel drive just to get through. The road connects the KwaZulu-Natal region of South Africa with the highlands of Lesotho, reaching an altitude of about 9,400 feet at the border. The section on the South African side is mostly gravel, loose rock, and continuously zigzags up the mountainside. Rain can turn the road surface into mud. Winter ice and snow cause the steep sections to lose traction and can force the mountain pass to close. At the highest curves, cars have to make sharp turns right on the edge of the precipice, while clouds spill over, hiding the valley. Sani Pass doesn't just take people across a border. It forces them to climb over a wall of mountains via a road that feels like it was never truly finished. The Lanying Cliff Road is carved into the cliff face, suspended nearly 3,000 feet above the bottom of the canyon in Chongqing. The lane was opened by locals to break the isolation of communities hidden deep in the Wuxi Mountains. Many sections are only wide enough for one vehicle to pass, with the cliff pressing close on the inside and an open void right on the outside. The crude tunnels piercing through the mountains still retain their rough, dark, and narrow rock surfaces. At blind corners, it's hard for drivers to know if there's oncoming traffic or falling rocks blocking the way. Rain and fog make the edge of the road even harder to distinguish. Lanying doesn't look like a structure placed on a mountain. It looks like an escape route that humans were forced to carve out for themselves amidst cliffs that had no intention of giving way. Over 400 miles of road stretch straight into the Arctic, where a minor breakdown can leave a driver stranded in the freezing cold for hours. The Dalton Highway was built to service the Trans-Alaska Pipeline system and connect the area near Fairbanks with Deadhorse. The route passes through boreal forests, the Atigun Pass, and tundra that is almost entirely devoid of human settlements. Heavy trucks constantly transport goods, kicking up rocks and dust onto smaller vehicles. Winter brings blizzards, icy road surfaces, and temperatures that can drop below -40 degrees Fahrenheit. Cell phone signals vanish for most of the journey, while fuel and services are hundreds of miles apart. The Dalton doesn't need deep chasms to be dangerous. Its sheer isolation is enough to turn every stalled engine into a battle for survival. The Karakoram Highway was built by the labor of prisoners, and many of them never returned. Often called the Road of Bones, the Karakoram Highway is tied to the forced labor camp system of the Stalin era. The prisoners had to carve a road through permafrost in freezing cold, starvation, and deadly conditions. Today, the route still crosses some of the most remote regions of the Russian Far East. Winter can drag temperatures below -50 degrees Fahrenheit, causing machinery to break down and flesh to suffer frostbite in just minutes. The warmer season thaws the ice, creating deep mud and causing the road surface to deform. Kolyma shouldn't exist, and not just because of the terrain. Every mile of it also stretches out the memory of the price humans were once forced to pay. Looking at the Sidhu River Bridge, you can clearly see the absurdity of the structure. Thousands of tons of steel hanging over a deep void, enough to cast the entire valley in shadow. The Sidhu River Bridge hangs across a deep gorge in Hubei, with the bridge deck sitting about 1,837 feet above the valley floor, equivalent to a 160-story building. The main span is nearly 2,953 feet long, enough to make the entire bridge look like a thin steel thread stretched between two cliffs. The wind, low clouds, and the empty space below make vehicles shrink to an unbelievable size. During construction, the terrain was so treacherous that engineers had to use a rocket to shoot the first pilot cable across the canyon. Today, the bridge deck is designed for a highway. These roads are not just concrete or steel. They are a testament to one of humanity's strongest instincts, the desire to set foot in lands once considered impossible. From the depths of the ocean to the mountain peaks touching the clouds, every mile of road tells a story of absolute courage and perseverance. They might be places that should not exist, but their very presence has become a symbol of the limits that humans can overcome. If you had the chance to experience it just once, which route would you choose to test your own mettle?